Magda, it's lovely to chat to you today for She Can. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Hi, so lovely to be here. Well, right now I'm an interior designer and I work with craftspeople and artisans and commission them to work on projects that I work on at the moment. And at the moment I'm working on kind of really inspiring hotel holiday space in the lakes by you. And I suppose I've been brought in to bring the artisanal side of it and just have a different point of difference from the usual corporate offering. And I think really it's just lovely. It's lovely because it's a continuation of what I was doing pre-lockdown, where I had a gallery space and I ran workshops with artisans and workshops of kind of all centered around home making, you know, sewing from seams, learning how to sew clothes, learning how to make cushions, block printing, and lots of, you know, things that in fact actually the things that you made were a byproduct. It was actually the experience and the feeling of achievement and well-being for these workshops that you know, that was kind of the driving force behind it, and also kind of connecting people with artisans and the whole concept of making something from scratch. But going back to the interior design aspect, with the connection with the artisans, I've also been asked to put programs of workshops together for organizations, and that's been really exciting because it's about creating homes that have, even if people don't realize that it's there, but there's an element that when you have something that's handmade and crafted and has been made with a kind of considered approach and a design approach, and as opposed to mass produced, which we all know, there's a kind of feeling imbued in your space, in your home, that even if you can't exactly tap into why it makes you feel good, it's there anyway. And it's that connection that I think is really exciting and makes a space interesting. I mean, I can see behind you all your beautiful baskets and your crafts from you know, Africa. It's just lovely. But so I mean, it all really started 8 years ago when I left London and set up this shop, well, gallery space. And it was a gallery representing artisans. It was a cafe that was kind of community based. And then at the back was a workshop space. And it kind of evolved and grew into something so big that I actually felt a bit overwhelmed. And I had to find a way. You know, my kids would come in through the front door of the shop and out through the back. They'd grab a cake and go, "Mummy, what's for supper tonight?" And I go, what? And you know, they were 8, and I did this for 7 years really. But in that 7 years, it grew from 12 artisans to 60 artisans, and I was trying to juggle, you know, all the paperwork and trying to do this on my own with a few part-time workers. And it was just that decision: do I actually bring more people in and grow it, or do I reduce it and step back and do what I really want to do? Because I didn't want to be in a shop all day. I wanted to get out and make things. And I was finding myself getting caught up in all the paperwork and all the kind of administrative side that I wasn't interested in. And what I really wanted to do was create beautiful spaces. But I was in a position to create the space within the gallery shop. And then people would come and say, "Oh, I want that look. Can I take that?" I mean, I suppose I come from a background of architecture. I studied architecture. I'm married to an architect. My parents were architects. My son is going to be an architect. He's at university now. So everything I've done has been informed from an architectural point of view. and you know, that's not just creating beautiful spaces, that's kind of problem solving and looking at, you know, from everything, from like the project management point of view, or from looking at setting up a project and following it from beginning to end, and seeing the design process. But you know, you can apply that to anything from a human point of view, from a humanity point of view, from, you know, anything from commissioning a bowl, or commissioning a space, or a building even. So then I pulled back because the neighboring boutique wanted to come in with me and had this idea of creating a lovely home space. And I thought, well, actually, no, I'll let them have the front of the shop, and I'm going to pull back and do the workshops. And that gives me the opportunity to not be caught up in a shop every day. And then lockdown happened. And I just thought, well, actually, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. And it kind of coincided with doing some private projects in London. And then from there, it evolved to a project, in fact, a quick refurb down in Gloucestershire at the Lakes. And they loved what I did. And I did it in a very short space of time, under budget. So that was kind of quite exciting. And then from that, I went to another bigger project, and now I'm on an even bigger project. So, you know, things have grown and evolved, and it's lovely and it's exciting. And the next step is to try and include artisans in their offering. So whether they have a platform, which is what I did before, is create a platform to represent artisans. And in that, by doing that, sorry, I'm digressing, but in doing that, you allow that person to grow and evolve and try out and experiment and see what works, what doesn't. And it's kind of that connection between caught up in your workshop to what actually people really like. And that, for me, that's what I find really exciting. It's sort of how I evolve, how they evolve, and then exploring possibilities. And, you know, on the way, you have many mishaps or failures or things that don't work out, but it's the challenge and the excitement is actually how you can turn it around. I mean, just one little example, I've just made this amazing, I commissioned this lampshade made out of basketry. I mean, this is a really small example, but you know, it caused us a bit of stress because time-wise, this project I've been working on, and you've probably seen me posting, is an old manor house. We like to call it manor house. It's actually quite an ugly Edwardian house, which we had to turn into a beautiful manor house. And I wanted to imbue it with the artisanal feel, but make it sort of manor house, you know, have that sort of historical context, but bringing something contemporary and handmade. So I asked this lovely basket weaver down in Cornwall to make a basket, and I based it, because it's all by the lakes, I based it on a glass vase by Alvar Aalto that's iconic. It's curved and it represents the lakeside and the birches and the trees. Anyway, so I based it on that, but it was curved at the bottom and rigid round the top. And she wove it, and it was 1.8 meters long and only between 600 and 350 at the top millimeters wide, but it curved and undulated all the way around. But at the top, it was a ring, not a ring, you know, sort of open. And I wanted the transparency so that you could look through from the kitchen and see the lake beyond. You wouldn't block the view. And then I said, but so the bottom is curved, but in there I want, because willow comes in all different forms and sizes and shapes and colors. And so I said, can you find an orange bit of willow to weave and undulate the other way? So she did that, and it was absolutely beautiful. But she hadn't made anything like that before. And she's a professional lampshade maker. She makes lampshades for big restaurants and on a massive scale, not these little things. But she hadn't made one fitched, as it's called, with open and then just tied together with weaves like that. So of course, what we hadn't anticipated was the top wanted to do what the bottom was doing, and it was wobbling. And so she stuck a bit of plywood in there, and I said, oh no, that's losing the transparency. So she sent me a template, And I had to go to the blacksmith, Eric, bless him, up in Ashurst Wood. And I said, look, this is probably not what you usually make, but can you make me a steel ring that will sit in there? And he did, and he's not known for working very fast, but he did. And he made this ring eventually, and this was like all against the clock. I was installing in 2 weeks, and I had to, 3 weeks, and he managed to do it in a week for me. Sorry. And I got it down to Cornwall, and she tied it in, and it was spectacular. It worked. It made it rigid. So that's just an example of that kind of collaborative thinking off the top of your head to try and resolve something. Just a small example,
I love that, Magda. It's so creative, and I really feel you've come full circle. What motivates you to do this every day and going forwards?
I suppose it's there's three things. It's the excitement of the collaborative aspect, the fact that you're creating a beautiful space that has a meaning and that is longevity, that is sustainable, that is going to have an effect, even though someone might not know why they feel good in it. It's that sort of aspect of well-being that's the end result. Even actually, they become byproducts. It's that feeling that you feel comfortable in your home, or you feel comfortable in a space, in a public space, which is what I'm aiming for, and also that you're keeping these crafts alive. I'm not only talking about basketry, I'm talking about woodworkers and old forms of traditional woodworking. And I had these beautiful Sussex chairs commissioned by Nafisi Studio, and the skill set just to make the chairs involved 3 or 4 different skill sets, sort of steam bending, rush weaving, and the cabinetry involved in putting these chairs together. And that, in a way, if I can find ways of working with these people, keeping them connecting them with people that normally would rush off to a high-end shop and buy something that's machine made, but then showing them the appreciation, then that, for me, that's quite exciting and motivating. And also from a family point of view, my children have always seen me slightly hectic and working really hard, and sometimes I have this kind of guilt feeling that I'm not being a good parent or a good wife or whatever, but actually I think it's quite good for them. And it keeps them thinking, well, actually, that's something for them to inspire to, that they're going to create and make and do something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, it's amazing, Magda. It's so inspiring, and I think it gives you this grounded, it's this textured, high vibrate. It just makes you feel at home. It makes such a difference. Magda, what do you think is your superpower? Why do you think you're so successful at what you're doing? And you are. I'm not sure, but when I set up One the Square, the gallery and the workshop and everything, I didn't do it as a thing like, I want to be this or I want to do that. I kind of looked around, and I had seen this beautiful toy shop that had been there for 10 years that everyone loved. I even used to drive down from London with my children to go and visit it. And I saw that actually its success, to be successful, you have to evolve and you have to respond, and the reason I set it up is because I recognized that there was a need. And I think if you do something, well, as you know, sorry, I'm just preaching to the converted here, but if you identify where there's a need, and you look at how you can help and how you can serve that gap, and actually recognize that what the effect will have, then I think if you're always looking at where the need is, how that can help others, then that automatically helps you as well. And I think that's always been kind of slightly my mantra. Not sorry, I haven't articulated that well, but I could see that there was a need for artisans. You know, when I first opened the shop, there was a need for artisans, and there was a need in retail for people to have an experience, because otherwise they could just do that on their computer on the internet. And so I realized that there had to be a narrative behind everything that was there, and that's what drew people in, and that's what excited people, and people didn't just want to walk into a shop and see what they could see on screens. So that was the kind of premise I opened. And then the juicing and the coffee and tea, I mean, you know, we all like good food, and no one was doing juicing here, and I thought, we've got biodynamic farms around me. But what was, again, that was a slight byproduct, because I got the apples from a local farm, I got the vegetables from a cooperative, and they would come and pick up my compost, and then they would put it on their compost, feed their pigs, and then every week they would come and deliver their vegetables, and people would come and collect. So it's kind of that whole circular economy, which I thought was just so exciting. It was really brilliant, and it's like how we should all be living. I mean, you know, I can also tell you the stories of 4 o'clock in the middle of winter going to empty the compost and freezing cold and slopping it on your feet, things like that. You know, there's always a downside to every story, but yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
amazing, Magda. You really, you do it so well. It always is deeply rooted in how it should be and how it used to be. Magda, what would your top tips be for other women?
I think you really find your passion and express it, and and follow it. And if you are setting up, always be free, but always be open to taking help and advice from other people, because I'm such a control freak. I was always thinking, no, I'm going to do it all by myself, and I can do it much better than everyone. And then you get burnt out. Not a good idea. Take advice. You know, I'm a little bit impulsive. I've rushed into things, and it's been great. And if you've got the enthusiasm, but also manage your energy as well, because you can get burnt out. So that's one aspect. But I think really, if you can integrate, do it with integrity, do whatever you do with integrity and honesty and the passion, it just all flows together. As long as you've got that good intention, or that intention of doing it with integrity and following that passion, I think that's probably the best thing I could say to anyone, really.
Thank you, Magda. Last question. Where would you see yourself in 5 years' time? What is it that you want to work towards? Where do you want to be?
I would love to help set up workshops. You know, I love the idea of beautiful spaces, workshops. Workshops is, again, it's about that experience, about that feeling, because out of the workshops you get people kind of, you know, we all know it's helped with their mental health, it connects people together, it creates a community, and it keeps, you know, crafts and artisanal things alive. But I'd like to see that kind of more mainstream, more in commercial spaces. You know, I've been asked to do this for a restaurant, and this is a space where, you know, like a holiday place where people kind of go on zip wires and play golf and, you know, paddle boarding, and they are doing you know, woodcrafts and beekeeping and things like that, which is lovely. But I'd kind of like to go do a little bit more of that, so that people can come on holiday and connect with their families more and things like that. But I was also asked, I worked with a young doctor who was doing a project in Uganda, and it was actually a trial of showing aid workers to help in refugee camps to measure temperature and something else that would show whether the patient needed more medical attention. But then they were using, in the schools, they wanted to be able to use these schools that made out of containers to use them 24 hours and have a women's service in there. And they were saying that actually the best way that they could do some kind of therapy with these women was to actually make them making things, because in the making of something, that's when the stories came out. And I'd love to kind of get more involved with that aspect. That's where I can see in 5 years' time, when, you know, I don't need to work quite so hard with the interiors. That's the things like that, was, you know, connecting the well-being with crafts and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, Magda, thank you so much. Really huge congratulations. I think you've really come all the way around, and I'm super excited to watch your space.
Thank you. Thank you.